Welcome back to another episode of the Cruise Conversations podcast. I'm Frank.
And I'm Michael.
And today's episode is episode number 58, and we're talking about cruises versus all-inclusives. Let's jump into it.
All right, so like Frank said at the start, we're talking all-inclusives versus cruising today, and we got two special guests. One of them, first time on the podcast, my beautiful, lovely wife, and a mom of two burners.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Tara McKay. We have Theodore here with us on this side, and we have Penelope here with us on this side. Excited to give a good take on all-inclusives and cruises.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to have you, Tara. Also, we've got Chris Green in the house. Thank you, Chris, for coming back. Chris, what do you have to tell the people today?
I'm glad to be here, to be on the pod. It's an honor, so ready to dive right into it.
Yeah, so like we said, we're talking all-inclusives here today. I think we've all done one. I know, Frank, you've done one. I've done one. Chris has done one. Tara's done two. So kind of the plan today is really just to compare all-inclusives to cruising, right? We're going to look over different topics like food, the entertainment that the resorts have, the rooms and accommodations, different excursions you can do while you're staying at the resorts versus, visiting new places each day on a cruise ship, and kind of just the overall vibe and pricing overall. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of just start kind of saying kind of where we went, right? I know my first all-inclusive was at Punta Cana, right? The Dominican, me, Tara, and my mother-in-law went. And, I think when we get to kind of talk more about this resort, my experience is going to kind of differ more to the resort, I think, Tara, you'll admit, wasn't the best compared to the first one you had done and kind of I had heard going into it. But I know, Chris, you just got back from you said you had a great experience. And Frank, I'm excited to hear about yours too.
Yeah, this is a topic that people have asked for, and people are always comparing, right? Like even clients coming to us and they're like, hey, I want to go on a trip with my family or I want to go with my friends. Should I go on an all-inclusive or should I do a cruise? And they are similar in a lot of ways, and they're very different in a lot of ways. So like you mentioned, from my experience, I did a trip with Scotty, my wife's company, and we did an all-inclusive in Mexico. And so it was really nice. We had a great time. Definitely was one of those experiences where you couldn't leave the resort as much just because, you could do excursions. We did do an excursion, which was really great. We'll talk about that as well. But, you couldn't walk around per se. So it did feel, it kind of reminded me of a cruise ship because you did feel kind of like you were in this resort where, you might not want to get off. So, we'll talk a little bit about that, but I definitely have had, a decent all-inclusive experience. What about you, Tara?
Yeah, so I have done one in Cabo San Lucas in Mexico, and then the one with my mom, Michael, and myself in Punta Cana. And I think that they were two vastly different experiences, and I think it just kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Chris, you said that you've done an all-inclusive in Punta Cana. You want to tell us a little bit about that at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had the joy of staying at an all-inclusive resort in Punta Cana, and it was peak relaxation is what I could really just say. It was all-inclusive, so the food was great, all of that. Overall, it allowed me to just stop thinking and take a break from, work and, the hustle and bustle, and it was just great to kind of relax. And so if you're looking for something to just really just not think, that's probably the best place to be.
Yeah, I think Tara will agree with you totally there, Chris, because I know even going into our first one, that's kind of what she mentioned, right? She's like, I just like being able to have my Kindle, be on the beach, lay there by the ocean and just read and just relax all day, grab a drink from the bar whenever the drinks run out, and like you said, really just relax overall. Now, so like we said, we're going to break this down, right? So I think a good way to do this, Frank, is me and you, we'll kind of talk about the cruise side of things and then kind of let them compare their experience. Because obviously we've all done cruises too, and y'all can kind of talk to the all-inclusive experiences. And then Frank, if you have anything from your all-inclusive too, we can chime in there. But I think we just start at food, right? Because, any vacation, the food is one of the most important things, right? This is one of the things that when you tie it into the cost of an all-inclusive or a cruise, you don't realize, if you go to, the beach for a week, right, and you rent a house on the beach, food's going to add up, right? Because, you may make, sandwiches for lunch or maybe cook some breakfast at the place, but, most nights you're probably going out for dinner, and, this cost can add up. So I know, we've mentioned a lot about cruise food on the podcast, right? So I mean, I know when I think of a cruise, I mean, you have your free food options and you have your specialty dining. You have your buffet, which I think y'all be able to talk to from the all-inclusive side. And then you obviously have your food around the pool decks and kind of spread out around the ship. And then at the nighttime, obviously you have your main dining room and the specialty dining. Now, let's kind of hear y'all, the all-inclusive side of it. Kind of talk about your food experience at all-inclusives.
Yeah, so both of my all-inclusive experiences were very, very different. One was definitely more elevated, had a nicer vibe, and I will say better food for sure. And that was the Cabo one. The Cabo one, I don't really remember there being a buffet, to be honest. I remember it being all sit down, and there was a restaurant that was a little bit more casual. You would come in for breakfast and they had a list, and there was an area you could go and grab like fruits and vegetables and juices and things like that, but you would put in an order and they would bring it to you. And that one had a sushi place that was included, so it's not like a cruise ship where the sushi is usually additional. That one had amazing poolside food. I think most of my meals were poolside, and the waiters would come and they would bring you your food right there in your pool at your pool chair. There would be little stands. One day there was a mojito stand. One day there was an elote stand. I grew up in Southern California, so the elote man is something I look forward to every time.
Sounds good.
There was just amazing food. We did do an upgraded specialty dining that trip, and that was the steakhouse. This resort was very interesting in the fact that it had a lot of sister resorts near it. So it was one big company that had 5 or 6 resorts in the same area, and they would shuttle you to the other resorts. So the steakhouse was actually at one of the other resorts. And we did that. We went. It was at the top of a mountain, and it was gorgeous. Now, the one in Punta Cana, I think Michael will agree with me. The food was a little subpar. There was several buffets. I think a lot of our meals were in buffets. Partially our fault. We didn't realize that for this resort, you had to make reservations a week in advance for the specialty dining. The specialty dining that we did get to do was very good. It was delicious. There was a Brazilian steakhouse that was good. The sushi I think we did teppanyaki, and the teppanyaki was teppanyaki. I don't think you can do any wrong with teppanyaki. It's
pretty much the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we did a tapas place.
Nice.
And that was really good. But the buffets were okay at that resort. I don't think that resort is something I would write home about.
Awesome. Chris, yeah, now we'll throw it over to you. What about your experiences in terms of food at all-inclusives?
Yeah, I enjoyed it because the resort that I stayed at had arranged. So you had your specialty dining all the way to late night room delivery and everything in between. And so really starting from the elevated, I guess you could call it dining, those were specific to special club members or if you're 18 or above. And so you had like steaks, you had tomahawks, you had lobster, surf and turf, and those were really designed just for that specific audience. And so I was there many times because I enjoyed the food, and they had other options as well. So they had a lot of family friendly restaurants. So we had on-site Mexican, there was Italian, French. The list goes on and on. And so each night I had the pleasure of choosing something different. And so throughout the day, there's also other things you can do. So they have cabanas, and just like Tara as well, they had service right next to you on the beach. And so they would bring you burgers or sandwiches and all of those different things, empanadas, which Chef Kiss was amazing. And so, and then, you party hard all night, and then you want to go to bed, but you're still kind of hungry. So you just pick up the phone and they deliver it to your room, and you get yourself a nice little pizza. So overall, the food, there's so many different options, and I enjoyed every last bit of it.
Tara, one thing that stands out to me from the Punta Cana resort when it came to food, which you didn't mention, was that 24-hour like sports bar type place.
Oh, yes.
Now, this place, I mean, it kind of had like its own little, just small little grab and go type stuff. I mean, you had like pizza and chicken tenders and fries. I think
Nachos.
a couple build your own nacho bar. I think, like Chris, you just mentioned late night, and I think that's kind of where we spent a lot of the evenings, kind of just one there ordering drinks, but also kind of just having some of that food to snack on, which I think kind of compares to like late night pizza on a cruise a little.
Yeah, I don't remember there being a room service at that resort. And if there was, I don't remember it being anything included in room service. My only room service that was included in my Mexico all-inclusive was pizza. So there's just something about late night pizza. You need the carbs, you need the meat, all of those good things. But yes, the 24-hour sports bar was one of our main hangouts.
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of hit pretty much similar to my experience in Cancun too. It was like the breakfast joint had, pretty much everything you'd want in a breakfast. You had someone there doing, fresh omelets and eggs. You had fresh squeezed orange juice. You had pretty much full buffet for breakfast. And then for your other meals, you had the restaurant style. So lunches, they would do kind of like, again, more like buffet stuff. But then for dinners, it was, you had your Mexican, but then you had like, again, like your Asian restaurant, your Italian, maybe like a French. And you kind of just decided to that point, which one you're kind of feeling for the day. And it was pretty easy at our resort. We didn't have to like plan ahead, which was pretty nice. But I think that also goes to the fact that it was like a work trip and, you just they kind of reserved the seats for you in advance. So.
Yeah. The only thing I'll just add on that is, as well as like we had lunch, and so they had different themes at the all-inclusive throughout the day, and so they did certain things for breakfast. They had different types of I guess you want to call it different cultures, right? And so throughout the week and throughout the day, and so the flavor profile changed quite a bit throughout the week. So I got to taste a lot of different things as well.
Yeah, Chris, that's a great point. I feel like it kind of relates a little bit to the cruising, where every night you've got typically on Royal, at least, you've got like a themed night. So you got French night or Caribbean night. Even though not everything is, that cuisine, they're still kind of framing it with those options in mind, which is kind of nice because you can plan ahead. Oh, I'm going to eat Mexican tonight. Then tomorrow I'm going to eat like Italian, and somewhat in your head, even though it's the same restaurants, you get to kind of space it out a little bit. Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up on the food topic a little bit too is, with on a cruise, right? And we talked a little bit about comparing it against a cruise. You have a lot of times like set dining, right? So it's either early or it's late, or you have my time, but it seems like from my experience, what you guys are talking about, it seems a little bit more flexible maybe on an all-inclusive. I mean, you can always go to the buffet on a cruise. They always have that option, but you still kind of feel like there is a schedule maybe a little bit more on a cruise than on all-inclusive. So now let's kind of get into a little bit of a different category. So entertainment and activities. Now, we've talked a lot about cruise activities, and you've got, obviously all the shows, you've got comedians, a lot of things. You've got to pretty much on your phone, or they used to print them out back in the day. You could see all of the different things that were going on, for that specific day. And then in terms of activities, I mean, some of these, I know a lot of resorts have pools and water slides. Obviously on cruise ships, you've got similar things. You got pools, hot tubs, water slides, dry slides. I mean, zip lines, right, Chris? You got a lot of things to do. So, and I do think that this is comparable. But Tara and Chris, definitely want to hear kind of your experiences when it comes to activities that you guys really enjoyed, and how you kind of compare that on an all-inclusive trip versus what you've seen on a cruise.
All right, so yeah, the entertainment activities were a little bit smaller in comparison to a cruise at my resort that I stayed at, and so we didn't have a lot of different things to do, but there was some archery on property. They had like sports things you can do, a lot of different small items, and like tubing and things of that nature. They did have some excursions that you could do off the property, and so they had a shuttle which would take you if you wanted to do like dirt biking, things like that, and or go to a beach nearby, and so, or shopping. And so I did find from the cruises that I went on, there was a lot more activities, a lot more things to do going on every hour of the hour, and so every hour on the hour, I should say. And so yeah, definitely big difference for me when it came to entertainment activities for the all-inclusive.
Yeah, Chris, that's something I totally agree with. I know like the resort we went to had stuff, like you said, like the archery, like sports courts type stuff. Obviously, you have like your pools and stuff during the day, but I agree. I feel like on a cruise, you have much more, like you said, every hour on the hour. Babe, how do you feel about the ones you've been to?
Yeah, I'm going to preface this by saying most of you know, if you listen to or watch the podcast pretty religiously, I'm not an activity girly. I am very much so, get me my drink. I'll get my drink. I will read my Kindle. I have one AirPod in. I'm people watching. I'm reading my book. I'm just not someone who wants to do activities. I want to relax on vacation. I go so much in my regular life that I just don't want to go on a vacation. So I will say for my first all-inclusive, I was not with my wonderful husband yet. And he's really the activity person in the relationship. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to activities that were available. I know that there was like a water aerobics a few days.
Yeah.
There was,
I've seen that at a resort, so that's a good one.
Yeah, water aerobics. There was a ping pong competition. I'm pretty sure there was some sort of like make your own, some like mojito or salsa or something bar, or like guacamole bar,
Like
or
a
something.
class or something.
Yeah, I think there was a guacamole class, which to me just sounds like all you can eat guacamole. And I want to do that in my pool chair. But that's besides the point. I will say that our resort in Punta Cana did have nightly shows. Now, before he butts in here, they were not good nightly shows. They were not I think I was laughing through the whole thing. I'm pretty sure my mom and I had to get up and walk out because we were laughing too hard a couple of times. Maybe we just like didn't understand what was happening because it was in a different language, and so we just didn't comprehend what they were saying or singing, so we couldn't connect to it in that way. But I will say the shows on a cruise ship are obviously much better.
Yeah, the shows are pretty trash overall. I mean, when you think of a cruise ship, I mean, I'm used to the Broadway on Royal, the Playlist Productions on Carnival. I mean, the technology behind the shows, the set pieces behind the shows, a lot to it, right? You got a lot of people performing, you know. Now, this resort, it had like
a theater.
Yeah, it was like an outdoor theater area that was covered. It was a good size. Maybe they did better performances back in the day, or it just wasn't our week. But, you know, all right, this was about the time the song Pepas came out. Yeah. And if you're a Charlotte FC fan, you know, they play it before every game. That was probably about once a show. All of a sudden, they'd go into that song, and that'd be like the one time I would get into it. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, and like I said, like you said, babe, I'm the go person. Each night I want to go see my show, and I guess I kind of had to change my mindset at the all-inclusive, right, to kind of match the environment overall.
You went into it thinking you were going to get a cruise show, and that's definitely not what it was. But I will say I've seen some high school productions that were better than what we saw at that resort.
You know, and I think the difference is that, like, at least from what I've seen, and maybe Chris, this was similar to yours, is it's not as much shows as it is like there's clubs and like dancing and like nightlife at some of these resorts. I mean, I'm talking like a lot of them. We're talking like if you go spring break, you know, you're thinking Punta Cana, Cancun, you know, whatever. And a lot of those places have crazy nightlife. I've not experienced that, but I know that like after dinner at our all-inclusive, like the thing to do was like, hey, you going to the bar. I mean, we didn't really always go out. We pretty much took it easy at the all-inclusive, but you know, a lot of people were going out to the club after dinner, and that was kind of the thing to do. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Michael. Like, you kind of find yourself like, okay, what's next? Do we go back to the hot tub and grab a drink? Do we go walk on the beach? Or, you know, or we just go back to the room after dinner? Like, what do we do? It's just better to drink a drink with the show, I think. So, okay, we'll say the cruising wins on that one for us.
No, I agree.
If you're an activity person, for sure.
All right, so the next topic we're going to move into now is rooms and accommodations, right? So, I mean, when you hear us talk about the rooms on cruise ships, you know, we talk the interior, the ocean view, the balconies, the suites, right? You really have the 4 different categories. I mean, once you get into suites, there's all different levels to suites, kind of same with balconies, depending on the ship you're on. This is where I think all-inclusives has some pretty cool room types, right? I mean, you have kind of just your standard room or standard room with balcony, but then, like, I mean, you have some with swim-up pools and your own little hot tub thing out on your own personal, like, big-size balcony or area. Let's talk about some of the different types of rooms y'all have had at all-inclusives.
Yeah, I can go ahead and go. So both of mine were pretty similar. The only thing that was probably different was my first one didn't have the pull-out couch like the second one did. So I've been in most all-inclusive rooms are considered a suite just based off pure size. They call them suites. It's part of being at a nicer at a resort itself is their suites. They're not just rooms for the most part from my experience. That's just a little bit of my hospitality background coming out. But so both of them had balconies. One was right outside of the pool. It was not a swim up. That is not in my tax bracket. Way so far out of my tax bracket. But it was not a swim up pool, but we could see the main pool that we wanted to be at, and we could walk out of our balcony into the pool. Now, you did have to, if I remember correctly, there was a key scanning that you couldn't just like walk in and out of our balcony. It was scan in and scan out. That way there weren't random strangers coming into your balcony. So for the second one, we were on the first floor again, and we had a view of one of the other buildings. This one was a little bit different where it was a larger resort for the most part. So there were golf carts taking you to and from places. There was a little like tram route thing, kind of like Coco Cay, just on a smaller version. And so we could see that from our balcony. Now that balcony was nicer because it did have the laying loungers, so we could lay out there for hours at a time, whereas the other one was just seated loungers because we were so close to the pool. So they both had bathtubs, both had separate toilet areas, and then both had very nice showers, which I cannot stand a cruise ship shower. It is just so small. I feel so claustrophobic. So that for sure gets my win. The bathroom in general is all-inclusive because it's a larger bathroom like a hotel room. That is 100% a win in my book. I don't want to be all over each other. As a married couple, one of us is always getting ready in the bathroom, and then the other one is always getting ready at the vanity. And it's just a pain in the butt. We're stepping over each other.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. It's even if you get like the biggest suite on any cruise ship, it might be about, maybe it'll be bigger, but it'll be relatively about the same size as a normal all-inclusive bathroom, you know? So very, very good points, Tara. Chris, what about you? How have your rooms been on your all-inclusive trips?
If I could just say ditto to what Tara said, because overall, the rooms were obviously a lot larger, and so there was just more space. And so the room that I had, I went with a big group, and so I got to see different ranges of rooms. So we had all or suites, and some had plunge pools, some just had walk up pools, swim up pools, and so those are a wide range. And so the room that I stayed in had a pool that you could swim up in, and they had lounge chairs. They had a lot of space in the inside the room. The bathrooms were massive. Like, I just felt like very peaceful, and so the rooms were definitely one of the biggest things. I didn't feel claustrophobic at all, and so yeah. And then they had daily housekeeping, and they really took care of the things there in the rooms, and it was just night and day. So I definitely love the accommodations at the resort that I stayed at.
Bougie McBougerson over here. The one thing I forgot to add is in a cruise cabin, 2 people is already tight in an interior room. 3 people, it's rough. I've done it. I don't necessarily want to do it again. Will I do it again? Probably. But in an all-inclusive room, 3 people, we still felt like we had plenty of space.
Yeah.
We were not tripping over each other. We were not tripping over each other's stuff. Whereas in a cruise cabin, you are.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Michael and I have been in one with 4 guests, and I feel like if people reach out to me and they're like, I want to put my family in one room on a cruise with 4, I'm like, do you though? Like, I mean, is there another option? Because it's just, I know like budget, right? Like money, it always comes down to money, but sometimes we can do 2 next door or, one across the hall, and it works out where you can do an interior and a balcony, but it's almost never a good time to share one shower with 2 kids and 1 toilet with 2 kids and 2 adults.
With no separation between the toilet and the shower either.
Oh, terrible. So I don't recommend that. And just, definitely recommend getting 2 rooms if possible. But yeah, it is definitely a different experience getting a room on, you don't have any interior rooms on a resort on land. So it's totally different. You can step out on the balcony, you have that fresh air, which is really, really nice. So now let's talk a little bit about customer service, right? So this is a very broad category, especially on a cruise, right? You've got your guest services desk, which is usually a mess. We've talked about on day one and, usually the last day of your cruise when everyone's trying to settle up their bill or they had questions or they want to complain about the service and get refunds. That desk, gets pretty busy, right? On a given cruise. You also have obviously your wait staff at, the dining restaurants. I've always had, great servers for the most part in the dining room on cruise ships, whether that's Carnival or Royal Caribbean. Usually I've had really, really good crew that have taken care of me, as well as, bartenders. Bartenders have always been, great. Obviously on a cruise, you're limited on space more than you are on land. So sometimes there's lines at bars, which may not be as much of a thing at all-inclusive. But, I've still been to an all-inclusive where there was, especially on when it's a beautiful day, you're sitting around the pool, they only have a couple bartenders. It still can get congested at a busy all-inclusive. But overall, customer service, definitely looks a little bit different on a cruise than it does at an all-inclusive. So maybe, Tara, you can talk a little bit about kind of your experiences there.
Yeah, of course. So my experience with customer service or guest services is really, they're both really great, right? Whereas the one major difference I've experienced is for an all-inclusive, it's really all-inclusive. Most people, I've never been to an all-inclusive where some people have certain packages and some people don't. It's everyone has the same packages, unless, of course, you're underage. And if you're underage, you get a different color wristband. When you walk up, you get to the resort, they have welcome drinks ready for you. They would have virgin ones for the little kids if they wanted one. Or for the adults who don't drink, they can still get a mocktail, which is really nice. At the bars, I feel like just because they know their occupancy and they know the fact that this many people are going to have drinks for the most part, except for a few one-offs, there might be a little bit of variability there. Whereas on a cruise ship, some people are getting the drink package. If you have the drink package, they can estimate how much you're going to drink. Some people don't drink enough to make the drink package worth it. But on a hot day in Nassau, they want a drink. Or on a cruising day, they want a drink. So I think there's a little bit more variability on busyness at on a cruise ship. And it can kind of affect lines, like Frank said, where some people might be drinking a little extra today. So they might not have that extra bartender on staff. So I think sometimes we were waiting 10 to 15 minutes for Alchemy to get a drink, or the pool bar. Sometimes on a hot day, on a sea day, you're waiting 10 to 15 minutes to get a drink, and they're running around and they're doing their best. They really are. Sometimes you just feel like you're waiting a long time. Whereas on an all-inclusive, I feel like they have the proper staffing because they have the proper out forecasting for it. But I mean, usually they have really great customer service. One thing that I will say that I miss at all-inclusives that I love coming back to the room and seeing on a cruise ship is you don't get the towel animals at an all-inclusive. That's just not something that they do. And I think that's it's always such a good time coming.
It's a nice little touch.
Yeah, it's great to see what your steward can come up with and that creativity that they have. So.
Tara, one thing you mentioned that did stick out to me, like you said, the welcome drinks when you walk up. I don't even remember what the welcome drink was, but I remember going back over to the bar and asking them to kind of make it for me whenever we were at that bar. And like we were saying, customer service, like we said, on a cruise ship, the lines do get long. I know our resort was kind of set up with it was pretty much 3 kind of resort areas, right? And each one had its own lobby bar. And what I kind of learned, I love a good lobby bar, right? I mean, you think of resort lobbies. I mean, they're open air, they're massive, tons of seating areas, little fountain type things, and then the bar areas. But like I said, you have the customer service here, and I feel like no matter what time of day you walked up there, I mean, unless it was kind of the morning and people were getting there to check in, there wasn't really ever any line there or anything. Now, Chris, how about you? How is the customer service at your all-inclusive?
So likewise, like Tara, I'm in the hospitality industry as well, and so anytime I think of customer service, I really just think about the guests and meeting their expectation or exceeding it, right? And so every brand is different, especially in that specific industry. So I'm gonna have almost but different biases for both cruises and the all inclusive. But I'll really talk more about the all inclusive piece of it. And so let's just start off the bat. Walk into an all inclusive exceeded my expectation right off the bat because, to everyone's point, they just gave me a nice drink, cold beverage right before I got off, and it wasn't a long line to check in. You didn't have to do all these different like procedures and everything. So right from there, it already felt like I was on vacation, and so I felt like I didn't have to worry about anything. They took my bags, and I really just got straight to it within 10 minutes. And so from that standpoint, that immediate first impression was just amazing. Versus the cruise, it's a little bit different. You have the long lines. Everyone's trying to hoard onto the boat, right? And so a little bit different there. So just going back to the all-inclusive piece of it, a lot of the people there, they're locals to the area, so they get to go home at the end of the night, right? And so not everyone's staying on property. And so sometimes you might see lower staff levels, people just running around having fun time. And I would say like the people at the bar, they're engaging as well. And so that piece was, great to see. Other than that, they took care of you, made sure they brought you towels, drinks, and everything. They didn't talk much because you're relaxing by the beach. Whereas, from the cruise side, I had a different experience. And so just activities, there's always people around, they're on the boat. And so just kind of looking at it from that perspective, it's kind of hard to kind of say which one, but I would say like for me, the all inclusive really kind of just set the tone from the very beginning and even at the departure. So that's just kind of my comparison.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points there. One of the good points you brought up was that on a cruise, the crew are like living on the ship with you, right? They're going to the same stops you are. They may get off, they may stay on the ship. At the end of the day, at the all-inclusive, most of them are going back to their families, sleeping in their own bed. Like, it's just different, right? It's hard to compare. Not making an excuse one way or the other, but that is a good point. The other point you mentioned that I thought was valid was the fact that the cruise has more work to get on board, right? Like, you're literally going. It's interesting because with an all-inclusive, right, typically what we're talking about is one that's international. So these are not U.S. So your work is, flying, going through, waiting in that long line at the airport to get your passport stamped, all of that stuff. And then when you come back, they don't have TSA pre-check. So you got to deal with all of that coming back in. So that's your kind of annoyance, right? But when you go to a cruise, most of the time you're going to another U.S. state. You're going through maybe a little bit more work on the U.S. side, but they've kind of automated a lot of it. But there's a lot of steps, and it's overwhelming for a lot of people that have not gone on a cruise before because it is a lot more work versus the all-inclusive. If you go to any country, it's the same process, right? And so, but, there is just some pros and cons to that, like anything else. So I think you brought up good points there.
I did like what you said about the cruise, and if you're more experienced, and I've been on a cruise with both of you on this, and so it was very easy because I didn't have to think about anything. You guys kind of just took the reins and handled business, and so it was still great. But yeah, to your point, it's just a lot of differences. So
You're welcome.
thank you.
Yeah, it is a very different experience going on a cruise with them versus my first cruise, which was with my grandma and my cousin. And yours was a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more, all right, let's go. I know what the process is, so hurry up. It's kind of like the TSA pre-check where like you guys are the TSA pre-check of cruises or the global entry of cruises. So thank you.
I second that.
Well, we appreciate it. All right, the next topic we have here to go over is kind of excursions and discoverability, right? Now, when you're at an all-inclusive, depending on where the all-inclusive is, it may have more around it, right? Like, Frank, you said Cancun, obviously. I mean, a ton around that. Punta Cana, not as much for us. I probably wouldn't have left the public area or the resort area, honestly. Now, when you think of a cruise ship, though, I mean, unless you're at a port stop, I mean, if you're on a sea day, you have stuff to do on the ship, but you're kind of just seeing stuff for the day, right? So we're able to kind of go see more places, may go experience more different cultures that way, but you can maybe see it at a different level while you're staying at an all-inclusive. So, Chris, let's kind of start with you. Did you do any excursions at the all-inclusive?
I did not do any excursions. Again, I went with a big group of people, and So one of the individuals, they did do an excursion when they came back. It was like an all day thing, and she absolutely loved it. She was showing everyone pictures. She did like not it's like dirt bikes and all of those different things. Like, but I did get a chance to step out of the resort, and so it was kind of just ad hoc. I kind of just went to the beach, took some family photos and things, and so that was kind of nice to get out. But other than that, I didn't go out any excursions on myself for myself.
Yeah, so to piggyback on Chris, I also did not do any excursions or leave the resort at either one. Like I said in the beginning, I am a beach, pool, Kindle, drink in my hand, chips and salsa next to me, girly. I if I'm in a different area for every day, my husband says, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. And that's perfectly fine for that. I prepare myself for that. And I take those sea days to relax. And I say, okay, you go do your thing and I'm going to do my thing. And if you want to sit here, that's fine. But this is what I'm going to be doing. And I mean, there were excursions available. Michael made it seem like there really weren't. We just, again, didn't look into it a whole lot. But after we landed where we landed and when we were driving to our resort and the area our resort was in, I agree with him. I would not have left. It was a little sketchy. Nothing against Punta Cana. I just think there's a bad area of everywhere. And I think we were in the bad area. And that's kind of how the resort kind of lined up.
Yeah, I was about to say the one it was a show in the evening. I don't know if it was called like Coco Bongos or whatever it was.
Yes, it was like a big concert, right?
And we did drive by it on the way there. And all right, our taxi drive to this resort, I rode up front, right, and he kept calling us, oh, you're Mr. VIP. And let's just say there's really no traffic laws in Punta Cana.
Absolutely not.
Because this guy was like going off the side to go around people. You know, but you're Mr. VIP. We're gonna get you there. And then he kept talking about this Coco Bongo place But I mean, I don't know. And even at the resort, they kind of mentioned it. It was kind of like one of like the evening things to go do. But yeah, like you said, we weren't really in the best area, so it just didn't make sense to really go check out.
Yeah. I will say he said there was no traffic laws in Punta Cana. We did Paris after a cruise, and I don't think there were any traffic laws there either. I don't even know which which Uber was a little bit crazier because they were both terrifying. Just that's probably one of my biggest tips is like don't panic too much when people drive differently than we do here. But
it's a good tip.
It's terrifying, to be quite honest.
I will say too, Tara, going off that and what Michael was saying, like for my all-inclusive that I was at, it wasn't necessarily excursions, but they had things to do. Like if you wanted to snorkel, kind of going a little bit with activities, right? Maybe I missed that. Like they had, snorkels you could take out for the day. You could take out, like they had jet skis and all of that. So they do have things on the property that you can easily just go and do. But again, not like we went on like a run, outside of the resort. And it was definitely like one of those things where like there was a gate and you had to push a button and they look at you from the camera. They're like, now we're going to let this guy into our resort. Like it was this, and that was Cancun, right? So definitely it depends where you are, to your point, Tara. Like not every all-inclusive is in the same, area, right? So some places I'm sure are great and you could totally walk around at night, but those are things to your point earlier, Michael, like you have to research that. Like it's not like a cruise where you're just getting on board and it's like its own little country and world that's like there's cameras everywhere and no one's getting on the moving ship in the middle of the ocean. Like you have to kind of research what's around my all-inclusive, what kind of food are they going to offer? Do they cater to food allergies and all of those things? Like it's a little bit more thoughtful, I think, when you're planning it maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say a lot of all-inclusives, when you make your reservations, you can put in a food allergy, kind of like a cruise. You would just mention it. And at every restaurant, my mom actually has a pretty severe food allergy, and they would ask any allergies, and they would make accommodations for her allergy. So that, I think, is pretty...
Standard.
I think food allergies are becoming more of a respected thing. For leaving the resort, a lot of resorts will have like that snorkeling included, and then you can do the upgrade for jet skis and things like that, which is nice because it's included in your price.
Yeah,
part of the all-inclusive.
And I love when resorts have like golf courses nearby. Like I've seen some of the Sandals resorts, they have like they'll take you to the golf course, and that's also really nice. So if you are a golfer, it is tough because I have a bunch of golf friends and I like to golf. Like cruising is a tough vacation for us because you're not going to want to lug your clubs and all that, and it doesn't work out. Like if you're going to an all-inclusive, it's a great opportunity to maybe play some beautiful courses in Mexico or Dominican or wherever you're at. So yeah, so let's move on a little bit now to the overall vibe. I think Tara kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but the overall vibe on a cruise, again, it's very dependent on the cruise line, how many nights you're sailing, right? Like 3-night cruises are definitely more of a party vibe versus a 7-night, on a, maybe a little bit more of an expensive cruise. It's going to be more laid back. There's going to be more families, right? So totally different vibes. You've got adults only cruise lines now with Virgin. You've got a whole variety. I do believe it's very similar with all-inclusives, right? I believe that you have, the party all-inclusives where people go just to get drunk and dance and meet strangers. But I think you also have the ones that are more family-oriented, right? Where you can bring your kids. Obviously, you have the adults-only ones, the honeymoon all-inclusives as well. But I feel like there's a wide variety, right? Maybe, Chris, you can talk a little about your experience on this.
Yeah, I think this past year I was able to do almost like 2 cruises and inclusive, so it's all fresh. And so I kind of just say what the overall vibe for the all-inclusive is very just relaxing for me. It wasn't so much partying, it was very much lay by the beach, like Tara, Kindle girly, whatever what you call it. It was very much that vibe, just time to sit down and recharge, eat, and just not really worry about all the other things that were going on. I definitely enjoyed the cruises because I felt like, especially the people that probably I went with, it was a lot of partying, right? And so you're hanging out late, you're singing songs and all those different things, a lot to do on different parts of the ship as well. And so I think it just really just depends on that person, right? So what they're going there for, what they're doing, who they're with, and also just the different brands. And so of cruise ships and the all-inclusive. So it just kind of varies. And so you just kind of have to pick carefully, I guess, to kind of cater to what you're looking for. The overall vibe, all-inclusive for me, relaxing, cruise, party.
Yeah, so I think, my first resort I mentioned, it was several resorts in one area, one brand, several resorts. And that one, you really had the choice of, okay, where do I want to go today? I can get a completely different vibe with each resort. So the one that we stayed at was very much the Kindle drink my drink girly, which is my mom and I to a T, and it was perfect. There was one day where we were like, I think the second or third day, we were like, okay, let's go see what the other ones are really about, because we paid to have this ability to go to all of these resorts, which was included, but you're paying for it in your price, right? So we went to one and it was total party vibe. Like think Cozumel or Cancun, spring break. Where do people go to spring break in Florida?
Miami.
Yeah, Panama. Think of Panama City Beach times 10. Like the pool was packed, the whole it was a pink hotel and everything was pink and it was just crazy. Was I not supposed to say Panama City Beach?
Crazy.
Everyone's just there to party. It was just a whole vibe, and it's a perfect vibe if that's what you wanted. It was a little overstimulating for me, so we went to a different one, and it was a little bit more of a middle ground of there was kids and teenagers for the most part, and adults and families. I wouldn't say that there was like toddlers at either resort. There were like probably 5 to 15-year-olds at the second resort. Now, the second resort, there were certain areas that definitely got like overtaken by kids at some points. Like I would say the pool, they would take over the ping pong tables, which that's not a problem. But I think it's just there's different vibes for each person at an all-inclusive or at a cruise ship in my experience. Like I've done Princess and that was a little bit more family, a little bit older family.
Yeah.
It was a lot of grandparents and a lot of older generations, and that was great for them. And then I've done Royal, where you have the solarium and you can have that all-inclusive area, but then you also have those kid-friendly areas, and that's perfectly fine. And the main Lido deck on Carnival, you kind of have that good mix. And I think you can kind of make it how you want it. You can kind of take charge and go for the vibe you want.
Yeah. I will say I probably have a little bit of a different all-inclusive experience than you guys. I went with Scotty's company, like I mentioned. I think some of them actually listen to this podcast, so shout out to some of you guys from her work. But we went to Cancun, like I said, and like it was pretty much party. So like the pool had dancers, like constant like dancers around the pool, which was interesting. I was like, okay, this is a work event. That's, interesting that we got full-time dancers with like champagne sprayers and stuff. They had confetti like cannons, so like it would shoot out like air and like confetti with it, which was pretty cool. And then it was pretty much loud. I mean, you were in your room and you could hear like the music from the pools and the DJs, and it was bumping. So you actually kind of had to like get away to like another pool if you didn't want that kind of vibe. And they definitely had that, to your point. Like there was the party pool, and then there was always one that was like, a little bit more laid back, kind of like on the cruise where you got, the DJ or the music by the pool, and then you got the solarium and all that. But yeah, I've experienced where, it is a little bit louder at an all-inclusive, but that could have been, again, it's different resort by resort, like you mentioned. So you can kind of get whatever you want.
I feel like I went to the wrong all-inclusive now.
I mean, ours had like the white party.
Yeah, they had like another section, but I guess this one was also a lot of family too as well. But yeah, next all-inclusive, I'll come to you guys and get some recs.
Yeah, I think vibe is where I kind of struggle with our resort, right? I don't know if it really had an identity of what it was trying to go for. It was a family-friendly one, right? So there were kids. Obviously, like the kids weren't out at like the parties at night or like the entertainment or any of that. But like I ended up, now I'm not a big like workout on vacation type of person. I work out when I'm home all the time, but actually this trip I was on a fitness challenge for work, and I did have to work out each day. And so like my morning routine was kind of go get breakfast, go walk over to the gym, get a workout in, go walk to one of the lobby bars, because there was like only one place on this whole entire resort had iced coffee. And if you know me, I don't drink hot coffee, and I needed my coffee. And then I'd go kind of catch up with Tara and her mom. And so, it would take a little bit of time off my morning, but like I said, like if I took that out, like I'm not the type, like I said, Tara, she can lay on the beach all day long, read her book. Like I said, that's not me. I'm really go. Like I said, this resort wasn't as much party, like you said. There was kind of like the white night on the beach, but like we didn't know about it. And that was kind of just like another struggle. We kind of saw these lights off in the distance, and we weren't even in white, but showed up. We're like, oh, it's a white party going on. And I think that's where kind of just the vibe of an all-inclusive kind of confuses me a little, because obviously like a cruise, we've said everybody gets on the same day. Everybody's starting their vacation the same day. We've mentioned on this podcast in the past kind of like the energy behind that. Whereas an all-inclusive, people are checking in, checking out each day. So I feel like the entertainment and scheduling kind of differs a little versus your standard weekend cruise or 7-day week-long cruise.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
So this is kind of our last category, and then we can kind of go into just overall thoughts, but wanted to talk a little bit about price and inclusions. And I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. We all went to dinner before this. Sorry, Chris is in Florida, so we didn't get to go to dinner with Chris. We'll send you some food, Chris. Thanks for coming on. But, when it comes to cruising with price and inclusions, right, everyone on the cruise, there's definitely a wide variety of what you pay to get on, right? You've got your interior room, you've got suites, but when it comes to all inclusives, right, the resort varies so much. And you've got resorts where, all inclusive, everything's included. If you want to take the boat out, we're just going to toss you the keys. You've got your own pool. Like that is some luxury, bougie all-inclusives. They have them for sure. Then you've got the all-inclusives where, you're worried about drinking the alcohol because it may be not good for, like, it may not be real stuff, and the food is going to make you sick. And like, so I would never want to go on the cheap side versus when you look at, cruises in the US and you look at the price, you've got Margaritaville at Sea is one of the cheapest. You look at MSC, which is one of the cheapest, and those are just newer, right? The ones that are more established that are still reasonable. You've got Carnival, Norwegian, Royal, maybe Carnival's a little bit cheaper, but they're all relatively the same, right? And what I'm trying to make with this point is that, the difference in quality from the cheapest cruise I can book someone on right now on a Margaritaville at Sea or an MSC versus just the average on a Royal or on a Norwegian or on a Carnival or even on like a Virgin is such a different range compared to all-inclusive. Like all-inclusive vary so much in what the quality is. And we talked a lot about different resorts tonight, but you can really get a great all-inclusive for a great price, or you can get one that like you book and you really regret it. Like we've had friends that go on honeymoons to all-inclusives in Jamaica and they're like, this is the worst experience ever. Like this is the worst honeymoon I've ever been on. And it's like, yeah, you may not have done your research or like looked at the reviews and looked at pictures of what your room is going to look like. And yeah, it looked like it was from the 90s, So like those types of things, it's just a very large range of experiences. And what I'm trying to go with price, right? Like the price just varies, same thing with the cruise, the price is going to vary. But overall, I do feel like the cruise is a good value. And if you are going to try to get a price, an all-inclusive, I just recommend that you really do the research on what you're getting for the price and just be willing to, put the time in to find the right resort for you is really what I'd recommend.
There's so many variety of all-inclusive resorts, whereas you have about 12 to 15 major cruise lines, specifically out of the U.S. for the most part. And what you're getting on them is vastly different, but there's enough of a connection between them that you can kind of know what to expect. You kind of know what you're getting yourself into. They're well-traveled. Most people have done one of the 12, if not multiple of the 12. And that's awesome because you can get that background information. There's so many all-inclusives around the world that you just don't know what you're getting yourself into all the time unless you talk to somebody who's been to that resort specifically. And the one thing I'll say for pricing with all-inclusive versus cruises is with an all-inclusive, you kind of know what you're getting into when you click that, okay, what's my estimate? What's my total going to be? Whereas on a cruise line, we were just kind of looking at this last night to do another cruise this fall, and you kind of get into, okay, this is my price, this is the cruise fare, this is the taxes and port fees and things like that. But then you have to add in the thought of, okay, what's the drink package? Or if I don't get a drink package, how much is each drink? Michael mentioned he doesn't drink hot coffee. And to that, a lot of times he doesn't even drink regular iced coffee. He loves cold brew and that's what he likes. But that's not usually included in the normal all-inclusive of a cruise line, of a cruise ship package. And what you get on that is hot coffee, which is fine for me. But for him, we have to add in the price of him going to the cafe every day. And then we have to add in gratuities because that's not added in. And that's, depending on the line, 18 to 22 plus per day per person every day. And that's just something that you don't necessarily think about. And on a 5-night cruise, if they're $20 per person per day, that's $200 that you're adding to your total price. And if you choose to not prepay that, you're getting hit with that at the end. Whereas an all-inclusive, I go into it, my credit card is gone, that bill is signed. Unless I actively choose to go to like the specialty dining or I actively choose to buy a bottle of wine, I don't have to worry about the final cost.
Yeah. Babe, you mentioned kind of knowing what you're getting going into it, right? One thing I didn't know I was getting going into the all-inclusive? Bruegel.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about drinks much overall. I mean, we mentioned obviously the all-inclusive. I mean, yeah, you can get drinks whenever you want. I think, Frank, you mentioned maybe like obviously different resorts. I mean, are going to provide you with some different liquor out there. So that's kind of just one thing to look at. I was not drinking any Woodford, Tito's, Grey Goose, any of that. No, I mean, the liquor of choice there was Bruegel rum. I've only seen bottles of it maybe twice since that cruise. And when I see it at a restaurant, I was like, oh boy, don't even think about giving me any of that.
No.
I mean, I guess it did what it needed to do that week. We definitely took some shots of it.
Speaking of shots, that's one thing that I'll bring up. And you kind of said you can get a drink anytime on at an all-inclusive. If you get a drink on a cruise ship, you get one every 15 minutes. I don't want to take a shot and have to wait 15 minutes to take
They usually
another.
don't. Like a lot of people are. It's like 5 minutes.
I was about to say,
I mean, we took a shot. Yeah, we did that on our cruise, Chris. We took a shot literally in the solarium, and they're like, okay, we'll get you your next one. Like they were pretty
Was this
cool.
the first day though before they had to swipe your card?
No, I mean, we had our cards. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I think it also just depends on the cruise line and the actual person that's doing it. Like maybe their policy like is, to your point, like 15 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it is. But if they actually enforce it, that's kind of like weird, like they shouldn't. A lot of times they don't actually enforce that one. But I do think you brought up a really good point, not to cut you off on that, but with the payments, right? So like on a all-inclusive, you swipe your card and you're like, oh, my credit card's now $4,000 or $3,000. But on a cruise, like a lot of times we're taking deposits, Utopia of the Seas, $200. And you've got until 3 months before or even 75 days before to like make as many payments as you want. Is that pretty much the same for an all-inclusive where you can like decide, on X date, I want to pay $52 because I just want a scratch-off ticket for $50. Like, can you kind of decide how much you want to put down on that vacation? Or is it we take all that money and now they got $3,000 of your dollars and yeah, it's done?
Yeah, so you can do it multiple ways. So some of them will have deposit now, pay in full by a certain date. I haven't seen one that you can do like payments unless it's like a monthly payment breakdown where it's kind of like through a credit card company or something along those lines of you can make this many payments over this many months. But a lot of all-inclusives will do a cheaper if you buy now, pay now, or a lot of all-inclusives will do a cheaper rate if you do reserve now, pay now, because they will be making more money off of you in the long run because they'll have the money in their bank account for longer periods of time. So you can kind of have that little bit of wiggle room, but in my experience, I usually pay for it up front, and then it's like a free trip when the trip comes around, girl math.
I mean, I kind of had the same thing. I just paid it all on like just the credit card, and like that's kind of like how the pricing broke down for me. Cruising was a little bit different because I also did it through a travel agent, and so just the whole billing process was a little bit different. And so I found it pretty simple on both ends. So it's a pretty, I would say, an even trade-off, depending on which way you look at it.
So to kind of wrap us up here now, let's kind of just all go over kind of your final thoughts on all-inclusives, kind of how you compare it to cruise vacations. Obviously, they're both great options. Tara, do you want to start for us?
Yeah, sure. So I think they're both great options. You can do whatever you want with both of them. You can make it the trip that you want. It really kind of depends on the type of trip that you're looking for. If you want that relaxing, I want to shut my brain off, you're going to want to do an all-inclusive. I know that Chris said the all-inclusive, he wasn't really thinking about work or anything, but the nice thing with an all-inclusive too is they usually have Wi-Fi and you can kind of keep in contact with your family. So if you have kids or you have family that you need to keep in contact with, that is for sure a big plus, and it's not costing you anything extra. Now, a cruise is great. You're going somewhere new every single day for the most part. You might have one day to relax on a sea day. I mean, our honeymoon, we saw 5-6 different places, and it was amazing for what it was. And it was so go, go, go that we needed those few days that when we got back to relax. Whereas an all-inclusive, I'm ready to jump back in. It feels like a true restful thing, or true restful time. So it really kind of depends. Now, can I make a cruise restful? Absolutely. I send Michael off and I tell him, go do your hourly on the hour activities. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to drink my drink and I'm going to read my book. And you know what? It works out perfect for us because he has something to do and I have something. I get to do what I want and he gets to do what he wants. I mean, this is the person that if we're going to a brewery, I bring a card game to keep him occupied. Like we sit there and we play card games and I'm sure people look at us like we're crazy, but it's the only way I can sit there and drink a beer without him like, okay, what's next? What's next? So
shout out Monopoly Deal. That deck of cards has gone a long way for us.
It saves us in airports. It saves us on cruise ships, all of the things. But he really gets his enjoyment out of that go, go, go. And that's great for him. That's my little extrovert husband. And I love that. But my introverted self, I just want to relax. And it's funny, even we were at my in-laws' house this weekend, and they warned some family members who hadn't been on a cruise with us yet that are going on a cruise with us next year. And my mother-in-law looks at the table and she says, if Tara says she needs alone time and she wants to relax, you better leave her alone, because it's just a known fact that if I want to relax, I need my time to relax. And that's okay. It's okay if you're that way. We all need some quiet time. I'm an introvert.
I'll be there to distract them.
Yeah, you go distract them. You keep them company. You and Michael can go with them, and I'll sit back and I'll read my book. But yeah, you can make both what you want. They're both a great time.
Chris, any final thoughts on all-inclusive versus cruising?
All-inclusive versus cruising, right? I think it's just really, again, do your research to figure out what you're looking for. I found myself at the resort that I stayed at with my friends that it was just very relaxing and very peaceful, go with the flow and just kind of walk and kind of have your own adventure. Whereas as cruises, it's, there's something to do, something different to do almost every hour. You're going to different parts of the world, islands, if you will. And so it was just, I just kind of feel like you just kind of figure out what you're actually looking for. And to Tara's point, are you looking for that adventure? You can make it your own, pick your own adventure, or are you looking for something where you could just be one place and kind of just make your adventure in that space? So overall, I mean, I'm a cruise guy, through and through over the last 2 cruises. Thanks, cruise conversations. But yeah, I'm a cruise guy now, and so I think that's kind of like where I will lean more to. But I definitely want to give all-inclusive another chance. Maybe I'll try to pick a more party one. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think those are great points you both made. I think for me overall, like you said, do more research going into it. Maybe find a resort that has just more info out there online to kind of know what you're getting yourself into. I mean, like I said, I feel like we just weren't as prepared as we could have been going into ours, which, like I said, with cruising, I mean, we're always researching stuff. We're always watching videos. I mean, talking about it once a week here with all of y'all listeners. But hey, yeah, I mean, if you're a resort out there and you're listening, I mean, I think all of us would love to come on out. I mean, we'll partner with you, we'll come out, provide some content if you provide us a place to stay.
Yeah, I'll read lots of books. I will take all the pictures, reading all of the books, and drink all of the drinks.
Yeah, so, not to beat a dead horse, I think you guys all brought up really good points. I think there is a cruise out there for anyone that, like Tara mentioned, anyone that wants to relax. There's probably a cruise line out there for you. Maybe we wouldn't recommend a Royal or a Carnival or a Norwegian. Maybe you'll find another option. And if you're looking for a resort, to Chris and Tara's point, you can definitely find one that's a little bit more laid back, one that's family friendly for the kids, or you can find one that's adults only that, like mine, had the let's get down to business in the elevators. Every time you're going down, even if you're hungover, they had that song playing in the elevator. So yeah, Chris, I'll send you that link. You can get out there at some point. But no, I mean, overall, they're both very good experiences. It comes down to, are you okay with this? I think it really comes down to, are you okay with sea days? Are you okay with, being in the middle of the ocean and, maybe being surrounded by a lot of people, right? There are a lot more people, on a cruise ship for the amount of space there is. Is that your vibe? Or do you kind of want to not have that kind of environment where you're around a lot of people and you feel like you kind of may be trapped, you don't know where to go? Just totally different vibes and different strokes for different folks. So if you're leaning one way after this, hey, I would love to do an all-inclusive, or I'd prefer a cruise, there's not a bad option. We can find something that fits your needs and kind of what you're looking for. So with that, Chris, Tara, it's been great. Tara, welcome to the podcast. We've also talked about bringing my wife on, and we're doing maybe a wife takeover at some point where they can just make fun of us like you guys probably all do from your cars and from your houses. So we'll give you that opportunity at some point. And
can we put that up as a poll this week on Instagram of if the wives should do a takeover?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the validation. I mean, I was thinking we're just going to do it anyways.
Oh, they don't have a choice. I'm coming back, but I want to know how soon I can come back.
Okay. All right. We'll put a poll out there. We'll do that. And Chris, always a pleasure. Chris is one of our favorite guests to have on. So Chris, thank you so much. You are a wealth of knowledge around cruising and all-inclusives, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me tonight, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Excited to come back in the future. And yeah.
Well, hey, we just want to thank Tara and Chris for coming on again this week to talk to us, and thank all you listeners really for tuning in to another episode of the Cruise Conversations podcast. As always, if you have any questions for us to answer on a future episode, feel free to either DM us on Instagram or send us an email at cruiseconversations@gmail.com. Now, Frank, we have a pretty big announcement we've been hyping up a little, right?
Yeah, I mean, most listeners probably are not still listening at this point, so we can consider this exclusive update here. But we've been teasing August 10th for a couple weeks now. Hopefully your calendar is already marked for that date. But I will be on Utopia of the Seas, Michael and I, as well as the Cruising Bear, which he's been on our podcast a few times. We are going live from Utopia of the Seas. We'll be talking anything cruising, not just Royal Caribbean, not just Utopia, but we will be giving our initial thoughts on that. So check us out. You can go on YouTube now and just turn on the bell so that you're notified when we go live. It's August 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, for sure. Like we said, go do that. And if you're ready to book either Utopia, any other cruise, and all-inclusive resort, you can send us a text at 704-313-8556 or fill out the JOT form in our bio. We'd love to help you plan your next cruise or resort vacation. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday.